Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Flesh and Blood and Bone podcast. I am filmmaker Kyra Gardner, and this is my special effects makeup artist dad, Tony Gardner.
I am Tony Gardner.
That's Tony Gardner. He's still Tony Gardner every episode. Don't know why I do this intro, but I can't think of anything else. So comment below.
Genius.
What you think it should be. But today's episode is Daft Punk's music video Instant Crush, featuring Julian Casablancas from The Strokes. And we're going to cover my dad's work in the music video. And if you're watching with us today, I am dressed as the French colonial peasant woman wax figure from the music video. I tried to do like a glossy look on my face. It did not work out. This is our
Thanksgiving theme.
Yes, this is our November holiday themed episode.
If you're watching.
I was trying to do something in theme for the holidays, and this is what I found.
This is as close as we could get.
Yes, I felt like bonnet equals Thanksgiving.
It's either this or Scary Movie 2.
Oh, yeah, we could have done Scary Movie 2. Well, that'll be next year, yes.
Yeah, Chris
For
Elliott.
personal reasons, I didn't do another movie, which I can't legally talk about. So we'll just say that for now. But I just wanted to give a little intro into the backstory, I guess, the history leading up to this music video. And if you're watching this, yes, I have my notebook next to me because there's no way I was going to memorize all of that. So I'm kind of going to be reading. And if you don't use notes, then you're a liar on your podcast. And so Instant Crush is Daft Punk's fourth single on their fourth album, Random Access Memories, from 2013. The story behind it goes that while working on the soundtrack for Tron Legacy with Disney, Daft Punk met Julian Casablancas from The Strokes through a mutual friend in the studio. Daft Punk liked Julian's work. They gave him a demo instrumental track for their upcoming album, and Julian responded favorably, agreeing to come onto the song. He wrote the lyrics in conjunction with musician and songwriter Paul Williams. Daft Punk's original concept of the song going into production was about the childhood memory of meeting a girl and having instant feelings for her, but ultimately not having the chance to be with her. The music video for the song takes that concept and meshes it with inspiration from the fairy tale, The Steadfast Tin Soldier, which is about a tin soldier's love for a paper ballerina, which I did not know. It is also said to call inspiration from the Twilight Zone TV series. The music video follows a French soldier that looks like he's from like the Napoleon War era, in a museum or art gallery, and a new wax figure comes into the gallery, and she is a peasant woman, which I am dressed up as, and it follows his love for her and the requited love for her for him, and it's a very cute love story with no dialogue, just the song, intercut with Julian singing and the wax stories and the wax figure's love story.
And there you go.
We'll go into deeper detail of the music video itself. But first of all, let's take it back and go to your story of getting to work on this. Obviously, you had already worked with Daft Punk. You'd made their helmets. Their helmets make a cameo in the music video.
The original helmets, yeah, the electronic ones.
Yes. So how was the process of pre-production?
Pre-production was pretty straightforward. Warren Fu was the director, and he's a very visual guy. His background is doing stuff up at ILM, and he knows visual effects. So he was really confident that the technical stuff could be addressed, and he was really into telling this love story of these two people that can't connect. They can only see each other across the room. They never connect, but only in that last minute of their death, basically, do they get to actually physically touch. Yeah, which is, I mean, it's very touching and it's very sad, but
it's like real life, you know.
But he was really into figuring out different stages, knowing, you know, effects work and wanting to do all this practical, including the fire. He was really into figuring out different stages of melting that we could control instead of just making something and letting it go from normal to goo and you get what you get. He really wanted to tell the story of the connection between the two in the melt with their waxes blending together and
their waxes touched
and just their body language and everything else. But it's obviously a story from their POV from the start more than anything else, because you get Julian's statue coming in and you see his POV through the crate as he's coming up on seeing the woman. But prior to that, you get his POV of the ceiling going by as he's being wheeled into the building in his own crate. So it's sort of the lead into what is in this crate, and then it's opened and it's Julian Casablancas as a waxed figure.
French soldier. Is it actually from like the Napoleon Wars era or something?
The costume was I want to say it was based on a rental originally. We had to make them. We didn't make them. The costume department had to make them because we're going to ruin all of them.
Oh.
Warren Fu had an image from a catalog. No, not a catalog, but from like a history book of a peasant woman feeding animals like on a farm.
Oh.
And he gave us that as reference for kind of like her pose. And then he had an image of an actress from way back when. It was Grace Kelly.
Oh my gosh. So I'm dressed as Grace Kelly, dressed as a French woman peasant as a wax figure.
Exactly. Yeah.
The more you know.
And he was really all about the first impressions of both of those statues, making her have some sort of, he described it as sort of like a Mona Lisa smile, like very pleasant looking. He had a very specific picture of Grace Kelly as well.
Which we will show you if you are watching this video on YouTube.
Yeah, and we really tried to match that even in the hairline for up to a certain degree, because he wanted her to look pleasant and healthy and have a warm glow and sort of this mysterious smile. And then Julian's face, he wanted something that was more not stiff and militant, but sort of like a relaxed person at attention. And there was a big debate on should it match Julian's real hair at the time or should it be true to the period. And I think that's where a lot of stuff started to happen, where there was a sort of mixing of eras and vibes and
they mixed the vibes.
Yeah, and styles, so that everything had ended up with sort of its own look.
That's cool. It seems really like cohesive, kind of modern, but also really paying like homaging to what was accurate. I love that she's technically in a pose for feeding animals, because I think in the gallery she has it's like a farmish setting.
Yeah, and her arms are out.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be like she's open and welcoming, and then his pose was he's militant with his arm up. And then one of the ways to show the passage of time was having his arms slowly not be able to stay up where it was, and it gradually like droops lower and lower. And then he gets sort of like picked up unceremoniously and taken away out of this scene after they've spent probably decades staring across this room at each other and never being able to connect.
Yeah.
Only other than in I'm assuming it's his imagination.
Yes.
Because you're seeing her in the spotlight more than him.
Yes.
And then in that spotlight, he's imagining the two of them like
close together.
Yeah, almost nose to nose, but still in mannequin form and not being able to interact.
Yeah, it's when I was watching it, I almost thought it was something that would be directed by Spike Jonze.
Oh, interesting.
Just because the level of detail in the filming as well is really, you can understand all of this, that it's the passage of time is his arm going down, but also the light circling. Yes, the light circling his face, and then them bringing out, removing other figures like this. They
Displays.
Take out this, yeah.
Well, the astronaut gets moved in. It's like the future's kind of getting moved in. So
yes, they're out with the old and in with the new, and unfortunately they you think he just gets the boot, and then you find out she also got the boot over time from the gallery. But then, yeah, he has the wax figure man has the imagination of getting to be closer to the woman, and then they get put away. It's just really detailed, and their poses every single time is like, I'm sure that had to be storyboarded to...
Yeah, everything was storyboarded, and he would draw out, Warren would draw out how he wanted to see the two characters. Like, you know, once the fire hits, and the male's figure catches on fire and then sort of spins out of frame and lands on his back. When he lands, it sort of like breaks the neck connection, and his head turns all the way to one side, and his arms go out. And Warren would like draw all of that and say, this is how I want it to be. And then Julian's figure is falling out of a crate, standing up and hitting the ground. And unbeknownst to his character, the female was also retired, and she was put into storage as well, but she's up on a shelf up above him. And then when he's laying on the ground and the room is engulfed in fire, you see his POV looking up, and you see the sides of the shelves that are wood on both sides of him on fire, and you see the flame going up away from camera. I think there's just some really cool angles.
Yeah.
And Warren figured all that out on paper first so he could explain to us what he wanted. And then when the upper shelf gives way and the female figure falls from it and lands next to him, Warren wanted their poses to be facing each other, one hand above the other. So we would take the storyboards that Warren drew, and then we had got some fiberglass mannequins, and we chopped them up to figure out how to get to them to that pose while laying on their back and get the hands right, so we could send him pictures of something physical trying to achieve that. And in the in the time that we spent doing all that, we also were sculpting sort of little versions of, like, mini versions of the two figures, like on the ground, and then how they would melt into each other and sort of become one, which is the idea at the end of the video. A lot of times it was, you know, Warren just like, can you bring this head 2 inches closer, and can you tip it clockwise? It is very specific, trying to get things to line up to camera the way he imagined it in his mind and the way he had drawn it. And the nice thing was we had the time to experiment like that and do these little sculptures and figure out what the pose was going to be, how we could justify that arm position based on a rigid body landing and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I guess technically they're also like wax. So if you actually think about the reality, you guys did a good job of suspending disbelief, because technically you wouldn't like twist and turn like that if you were wax.
Yeah, it would be a fixed pose.
Yeah.
So like when they're seen in the beginning, they're actually fiberglass heads and fiberglass hands, and they're very durable, and people can haul them around and pick them up and dress them and prep them and do all the stuff in the beginning of the video. No problem. But once the one lands and the head turns, and we had the head on a swivel so that we could control the axis that it turns. So it looks like it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, because we're actually in there doing a very specific move, but it was only designed to turn to that fixed position and hit it hard, because we knew already that's what Warren wanted. Yeah. And it was built so that it could take a beating, basically.
I guess that goes to show like how important pre-production is, but also kind of sticking to what you wanted. Because if Warren came in and was like, actually, could it turn the other way or something? Yeah. You know, you planned all these shots to be a specific action, and then changing it on the day isn't can't really do that if it's fixed things. Also, if you're on a fixed budget, fixed time.
Well, just time. And we wanted, we were going to shoot it somewhere where we could actually literally set everything on fire.
Yeah, where did you guys film this?
We were in a warehouse downtown, actually. And they built the storeroom inside the warehouse so that it was all controlled. There was a pyrotechnics guy there that handled all the flames and all that kind of stuff.
That's smart.
Yeah, so everything was so well planned. It looks like a very simple, clean, basic story, but everything was structured. And he, like you said, he didn't deviate from his storyboards, and everybody then knew exactly what they were doing. We could go in chronological order because we had to, because we were melting
Yes.
the figures at that point. And we'd already done all the tests with the different types of waxes and paraffins and gelatins to figure out the best melt for the shot and the best way to do it. And we'd done a lot of this stuff back on the blob like a million years ago to melt people, and we knew what could look really gross. So we were trying to find like the beautiful version of melting where it was almost more poetic. And,
Aww.
you know, like in the beginning, it would look more like sweat, and then it would transition into their facial features melting. And we experimented with layering makeup and color because you have to paint the eyebrows and stuff. And it's like, how, if you melt from the inside, can you keep the integrity of the eyebrows and the face so there's still an identity? How long can you hold on to that?
Yeah.
You know, but we did tests, and you have the video where we started and we just took a giant cookie sheet and we put it up on bricks, and we put like an oven heat source underneath it. So this tray heated up, you know, to a couple hundred degrees, and you could take a wax head and lay it on it and just watch it just melt, and the pool spread out. We were trying to find the most sort of poetic, soft melt that we could versus something that was horror movie graphic. And we wanted the features to eventually softly dissipate and blend away. And we experimented with acrylic paints and oil paints for hair and stuff like that, trying to think of it like, how would it be manufactured if it was done, period?
Yeah.
And then what would those materials do? We'd actually done Angels and Demons.
Before this?
Yeah.
You did?
I think so.
Oh, wow. My timeline of your career is
I think we
all over
pulled some info from that as well, because we had done some time-lapse melting and come up with some interesting things.
There's that woman in the glass cage that you see melt in
Yeah,
Angels and
it was a historical statue, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my dad was pulling up some footage that they have of the behind the scenes of all these tests that they did before filming the music video. And if you're listening to this, I highly encourage you to come watch it on YouTube so you can see all this stuff, because there's this one test that we were looking at yesterday where what he's saying about the face being painted, you did, what was it, gelatin?
That was a gelatin test where we painted the face just with thick makeup.
Oh, yeah. And the way it melts into the tray, the eyebrow like comes off perfectly into the tray. It's so weird.
And then there's the one that starts to like bunch up and lump up and look really gross.
Look very blobby.
Yeah, there's some, it was fun to revisit some of that stuff, but there was a reason we couldn't use it for this.
No, you had to kill people, but kill people poetically.
Yes.
But also they're not people, they're wax figures. But
Right.
they are people because they fell in love.
And they wanted them to keep their identity as long as possible, so it didn't just turn into a pile of goo right away. So that's part of why we sculpted different stages, is so we could keep like the facial integrity. But we didn't know how the face was going to melt, because I mean, you can control it to a certain degree. And we have this, you know, we took that idea of the heated tray. We got a big piece of sheet metal, put that up on legs on the stage, and we had painted it to look textured like the concrete floor, and that was our heat source for the real ones on set. You can't 100% control how it's going to go, so we also had heat guns, and we were using those to help certain areas melt faster from the outside, and then the head was hollow, so we could blow heat through it as well. So it's kind of like you're sculpting wax while it's melting in a way, but you don't know what's going to happen with what's painted on for like the eyebrows and stuff like that. So like when we would cut from the hero head starting to melt to the next stage, which we'd sculpted at a halfway melt, and it still kept the integrity of the hair, we knew how the paint was going to come apart in the hair on the hero head. So we pre-painted, and we brought in like 3 puddles of this halfway one. And we had only pre-painted the hair, and we were just going to match what the eyes and the eyebrows and the eyelashes look like on that head based on how the one prior to it actually melted, so that there was continuity. And then the next stage one, we didn't have anything pre-painted because we didn't know how the paint was going to go, because just moving the heat gun could blow
everything one
brown
way.
all this way. So it's kind of like we would shoot a couple takes and then we'd have to decide which take do we want to use, because continuity wise we had to match to that.
It's almost like you were editing on set.
Yeah, the pacing just throughout that whole scene of like it, you know, because it starts looking just wet and sweaty and they're looking at each other and it's sort of, you're getting each other's POV.
Yeah.
And then as it keeps going, the camera's sort of leaving their perspective and it's moving out from that and it's becoming more observational.
Oh, that's cool.
So that by the end of it, you're literally looking down on them and their two faces have melted into each other's face. It was just trying to find something that was like eternal
love.
Yeah, basically. And then there's that little segment with the hands too, because his, you know, Warren wanted his hand to land above hers and still not touch. So there was still that sort of tension while like they're so close, but it's not quite. And then once they start to melt, his hand melts down
into hers,
and her fingers, you know, it's like, let's make sure her fingers are bent up so that when his hand folds into it, we're not covering it. We could actually have the fingers go between the fingers so that it looked more like people holding hands.
That's really cool.
And then we actually sculpted a final stage of that had just
the hands,
the tiniest bit. Yeah, the two hands completely 100% combined. So the last image of them could be 100% controlled. And then we had sculpted progressive stages as tests for the two heads melted together. But in the end, we had the two real heads and we melted those. That final stage one is kind of the end result of the reality of what we were doing, as opposed to it being stylized. It actually perfectly fit what we were doing. So it's kind of a nice way to kind of end the whole thing.
Do you remember how long you had to test everything?
I feel like we had a couple of weeks to test.
Only a couple weeks? You were like, yeah, we had a lot of time. Girl, that is not a lot of time.
Well, what we did is we molded a mannequin head right away. Just a generic mannequin head so that we could test slushing different waxes at different, basically densities that would melt at different speeds, and even like beeswax. And with like the gelatins, there's different blooms of gelatins that are different stiffnesses and they'll melt different ways. So we tested all that stuff, and then we started testing makeup on that versus paint versus just powder, and just trying to figure out what would look soft and not like a 70s horror movie kind of thing.
Yeah, we're not trying to be dead alive up in here.
Yeah.
Although that movie's crazy. If you have not seen it, I just saw it for the first time this year, and I'm so sad my dad didn't tell me about this movie existing, because just as you thought it couldn't get crazier than that, it does. And then you're like, it can't get crazier than that. It does. So the lady, or like both of them, their faces, it's actually like you used eyeliner for the eyeliner, or it's paint.
Well, the end result ended up being, I think we used acrylic paints for the faces.
Okay.
And then we used oil-based paint for the hair, because the oil-based paint broke up into little tiny blobs.
Oh.
When it heated up, whereas the acrylic paint sort of would keep its shape. Depending on how thick you painted the acrylic, you could keep it so that it lasted longer. And that's one of the benefits of doing tests is, do you want the eyes to stick around and the eyebrows to go away? Or, what do you want to last? Is it just lips in the end? So, experimenting is where you really figure all that stuff out. And then when you're on set, it's the same every time. It's beat the clock. And then you're on a stage that's a warehouse that the acoustics aren't great, but you can set a fire in it. So win-win. So it's like, you're getting the pluses and minuses of different things, but then it'd have to be evacuated for smoke after a burn. And then we brought in the old electronic version, all the LED stuff was inside the heads for the old original Daft Punk helmets. And we put those on one of the shelves in the storeroom and kind of like took the visor off and put it askew a little bit so that it looked like everything that was being put into this storeroom was obviously stuff that was coming apart, needed repair, was being retired.
Oh, so that was that in the script originally? That idea to have the
I think
Daft
it was
Punk
Warren's idea, actually.
cameos? And that would happen kind of on set, or?
No, it had to be planned ahead of time
'Cause you
because we had
needed
to pull all that stuff together and set it up.
That's super symbolic of putting the old Daft Punk helmets in the storage room.
Yeah.
It's like their old selves. That's
Yeah.
really cool
So
and
all
sad.
that stuff goes up, you know. And if you look at Electroma, it's interesting because in the end, Guimon self-ignites and walks off into the desert fully on fire. And his death is just immolation as well.
They really like fire and explosions, these guys at Daft Punk. That's really...
What's not to like about fire and explosions?
Just time. Having to do that on set, I guess. As a director, I'd be like, F my life.
Well, we could talk about Electroma at one point and talk about all the different explosion tests and all that.
Yeah, because also all the different kind of like the helmets you had to do. That's also just like an odd little nugget in my memory of childhood is like not the Daft Punk helmets. I mean, yes, the Daft Punk helmets, but the men heads.
Oh, and they take the
gold.
helmets off and they're the weird flat face thing.
I just remember
underneath.
that being around the shop.
Yeah, it creeped a lot of people out, interestingly enough.
Oh.
It was so basic, too.
So basic. Why are you even creeped out by it, weirdos? Yeah.
We'll be talking about primetime at some point, too.
Yes, we will talk about Primetime as well, which my dad directed and my sister and I are in, which I will have Brianna, my sister, and I also do like a react video on my YouTube channel because I haven't seen it. Well, I've probably seen it more than she has in recent years, but I'd be curious to see her watch it.
Yeah, well, it's been 20 years at this point.
That's, oh my God,
Right?
yeah, because I was 7.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God. I'm getting old,
Time
y'all.
flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
You
in
can
the
be
sun.
the statue that's retired in the museum.
I am retired now, actually, yes. I'm honestly, I just directed my first feature this past summer, and I almost retired just after doing that because that was insane. And once I legally can talk about that, I will. But so that tells you a lot of things about things.
But insane's a good descriptor.
Yes. What was I going to say? Oh, yes.
Oh, back to the video.
Back to the topic. We both have ADHD. It's hard. It's a hard knock life for us. I do want to touch on Warren. Had you worked with Warren Fu before?
No, this was our first experience working with him, and we'd done a couple of things since, and Warren is just great. He knows visuals, and he knows the mechanics behind doing the visuals. So there's no like lag in communication or lack of comprehension. It's just great. He's awesome.
I did some looking up because I didn't know who he was as a director before. So I just want to give some context for some people because it's actually kind of cool. So it's directed by Warren Fu, who previously directed several music videos for The Strokes. So when Daft Punk and Julian collabed, it made obviously the most sense to have him direct it. But he also directed 3 of the music videos of the 5 singles for Random Access Memories.
Right.
So he directed most of those music videos.
He's done a lot of online content lately too, like when Daft Punk was doing the walking cycle and it was showing the different stages of the robots, and it was just a social media post. That was just Warren on his own designing and putting all that stuff together and coming up with transitional stages of the robots.
He directed Lose Yourself to Dance, that music video featuring Pharrell Williams. And he also directed the music video for Get Lucky with Pharrell Williams as well. So I have a concept to pitch you. I have a concept to pitch you. I think Daft Punk exists in the Minions universe.
Interesting.
Because Pharrell Williams and Daft Punk have made at least 4 songs together. And Pharrell Williams has done a lot of the soundtrack for all the Despicable Me movies. So if there's any time one of his songs is playing diegetically, like on a radio or in the movie where the characters hear it, that means that exists in their universe. So thus, Daft Punk exists in the Minions movies.
Okay. There
which
you
we
go.
all know was created by Dan Povenmire. So So
especially Dan Povenmire.
Especially that end bit, yes. And if you don't know that joke, it's an amazing joke running on TikTok that Dan Povenmire, who is one of the creators of Phineas and Ferb, has created the Minions, even though he absolutely did not. But I'm definitely...
he 100% tells everyone he did not, but
yes.
the rumor will not die, and it's hilarious.
Carolyn Dunton created that, and I just love it. So I'm going to make sure I post that segment of the podcast online so that he gets more flack for creating the Minions.
Go to Dan Povenmire on Instagram and congratulate him on the great job he did on the Minions.
Yes,
that's
please.
The takeaway from this episode.
Please, he really needs it. I don't think he gets enough kudos. So that's my conspiracy theory.
Okay.
To get back to the wax figures and special effects of this music video, how many different versions did you have of, I'm going to call them dolls, the figures?
Well, there was a fiberglass version of each that was like the hero one. And then there were at least 2 copies of every stage of their demise. The first stage being an exact duplicate of the fiberglass copy in wax. And then there were 3 stages of melt for each one. But each stage would have 2 or 3 copies because you can only melt it once.
Yep.
Something goes wrong, you have to have something else to work on. So we had multiples. We showed up with truckloads of stuff and just melted all of it and left with 0 truckloads of anything.
It's a good cleanup. You walk in with a giant truck full of wax figures and you don't have to do shit at the end of the day.
Yeah, but we ruined everything, the outfits, the whole bit.
Speaking of outfits, for the lady, because I am dressed as the lady, she also has this like scarf thing that I didn't find. Was there anything
that
specific?
inspired that?
Yeah.
The reference photo that Warren found of the lady feeding the goats in the
awesome.
Like Encyclopedia Britannica or wherever it came from.
Yeah, I'll be
honest. I have that photo.
Yes, which we'll show you on YouTube or Instagram. Follow us on both of those platforms. Yeah. Shameless plug. Now this makes sense because I can't look like Grace Kelly. I was like, why does my face just not look like that lady? I tried to do the eyeliner right and all these things. But one thing I did try to do was because I didn't want to figure out how to dress up as like a melted version of her because
that's the horror version.
Yeah. And also I did it for our episode on the Blob where I dressed as my dead mom. And it took so long with real Jell-O to figure out how to do it on my face. And it was so sticky. And so I just didn't want to deal with that. So I tried to do a version where I just looked very glossy, where the figures are starting to melt in the music video. It did not pan out for myself today. You can't tell at all. And that's okay. But how did you do that stage of the wax figure where they just look sweaty? Is that just like you hit that shit with some Evian or?
No, because we had heat on it. You know, we had a heat gun on it to turn the surface waxy.
Oh, okay. So that was...
So that's blowing. And that was what was so great about the bonnet. Basically, the fact that they had sculpted hair is what made everything work for us because we weren't giving away how we were doing anything.
Oh, so you wouldn't really have anything
You couldn't
blowing.
see anything blowing in the wind, yeah. Unless the heat gun got too close and then you'd get little drips going. But it was just figuring out. And again, that's just with practicing it, how close you can get. And you know, if you can only get 3 feet away, you put 3 guns from different angles and then nothing's really going to move. And it just sort of shines up uniformly. And then you could turn one off and focus on just the eyes and get the eye to start to look wetter and meltier. I mean, I was joking when I said it's kind of like you're sculpting wax as it's melting, but you kind of are.
You are.
Yeah.
Did you have a fairly big team on the day or?
We had a bunch of people there, all with heat guns and everything else. You know, Tim Heising was the main shop supervisor for the project, and he was amazing. He was always amazing, you know, did some really great stuff. Different people did the sculptures. Julian actually wasn't available. I think he was overseas, and they did a 3D scan of him.
In 2013. Oh, I guess it's 2013.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like trying to find somebody to print it.
Oh.
I think what ended up being fastest was having somebody overseas print it and throw it in a box.
Really?
Yeah, because like there were only so many places we could go, and they weren't available at the time.
Wow. As we sit here in a room at the shop filled with 3D
There's
printers.
14 printers right there, and back what was it, 2013?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 11 years ago.
That's
we were
crazy.
struggling. Yeah.
How much changes in just 10 years?
It's weird because like when we did The Doors, the Oliver Stone film, we had to do a tombstone likeness of Val Kilmer, and they scanned Val Kilmer and they carved his face out oversized in like surfboard foam, but it was like segmented and grooved, and it was really primitive, but it gave us all his proportions. We could mold that and do a clay pour and then turn it into what we needed. And it's like to be able to use the technology as time goes by to do more and more stuff. It's pretty great. We just did a scan of someone making an expression, and we took their makeup from the film that they were in 40 years ago, put the prosthetics on the scan of them now, rescanned it, made a piece that we could fit over their scan from the scan of the prosthetic on a 3D print, and created a layer basically, and then we could meld all those together and create something brand new and create this likeness of this person from 40 years ago in their prosthetic makeup. It's like the tools now and what's possible and how you can mix and match and do all this stuff.
Wow.
Is pretty amazing. I mean,
would you suggest to upcoming SFX makeup artists who want to get into this that investing in an at-home, I don't know how expensive they are. I imagine they're expensive.
The price has gone way down once the copyright had to be shared.
Okay. Would you recommend people get familiar with 3D printing?
I think so, because then you're getting familiar with 3D designing. And the nice thing about doing 3D design is you can design something in 3D for somebody halfway around the world.
Yeah.
And you don't have to drive there or be there or speak
the same language
fluently. It's really opened the door for artists to be able to contribute that wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a great thing to learn.
There's this girl on TikTok I follow who just 3D prints stuff from SpongeBob. Yeah, like
really?
Legit. Yeah, there's this little cockroach eating a very tiny Krabby Patty at a table, and she like printed it life size, and then Nickelodeon was like, could we use this for our like an art installation that was promoting something about Nickelodeon that year? And so she like went out to the thing, and I think Dan Povenmire once again went and saw it, and now she has like such a following.
That's amazing.
And she just does it in her garage for fun.
That's amazing.
So, but you can use it for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Well, I guess everything you did back, starting in the 80s, everything was on film. When it's something like this, where I imagine some takes are sped up to speed up the process of the wax melting.
Not so much.
Not so much. Okay,
No.
because I know in other...
We were trying to figure out how we could speed it up in real time, which is why we had all the heat guns and the heated floor section.
I see.
And the sculpted version, so we could control.
Okay, because I was wondering if shooting on film as opposed to digital, which existed at the time, would have affected your work in any way.
No, I think it might have made it look a little harsher in a way. I think film and being able to like keep things real soft focus instead of a digital soft focus and keep things a little more romantic. I think film really lent itself to that zone.
Yeah, better. I would say so. Oh, I wonder what camera they shot on and what lenses they used, because it's very pretty.
It is. Yeah, it's very well done.
Did you get to watch Julian sing?
No.
Okay, so I imagine they shot both of those things separately.
That was separate from us, yeah.
Oh, then maybe he was abroad then.
He could have been anywhere.
Okay. Did you get to meet him, though?
No.
You've never met Julian Casablancas?
No.
Are you a fan of the Strokes?
Yeah, I enjoy their music.
What the heckity-deckity?
But that's just the way it worked out. We built the stuff for the show, and we were like a totally separate story from the singing portion.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to be part of our story.
Yeah, I guess that's just so weird.
But you feel like you know him because you're getting reference pictures, like make his hair look like this, and it's a reference picture of him, and
Yeah, it's like you would think you'd have met after you've made an entire fake replica of him.
But it's not a makeup, so there's no reason to actually meet them as a human for real.
Maybe Julian, please listen to this podcast so you guys can meet over FaceTime at some point.
And we'll melt you for real.
And no, we will not. Do you have a favorite part of the video?
I just really like the overall vibe of the whole scene when they're melting. I know that we shot a lot more than what's on there.
Oh.
And it would be fun to see all that stuff, because it follows a very linear pattern, and then we're cutting away to other things. The music is only so long, so it's like it's always interesting to see what's chosen to illustrate the point versus what's pushed off to the side. But I still really like their hands melting together. I think that's really cool. I think that was a big goal, was to be able to get that right, and I feel like we got it. And then I really like when they're looking at each other and you're seeing their POVs sort of at the beginning of that whole scene. I think that stuff that has personality or emotional impact is pretty cool.
Yeah. I really like when the lady falls off of the storage shelf and the head turns.
Oh, and they're looking at each other?
Yeah, it's just a great way to get them to be able to do that. Yeah. That, like, in reality, you wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't just snap its neck 90 degrees, but it's everything. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I appreciate that everything is so motivated.
Yeah, and that's all Warren.
Yeah. He's got some cool music videos.
He's only got a couple of minutes to tell a story, and he's like, this is going to land here, this is going to land here. He's going to figure out the angles ahead of time, and then we're going to shoot the practical stuff to show him what that angle looks like with the practical stuff, and then he can adjust again ahead of time before any of us get there, so that everything can be true to his vision when we're on set. And that's the ultimate goal, is to achieve that.
Another question I have would be, what is something that you learned, special effects wise, on this music video that you thought was very valuable?
I learned that I want to do some weird death scene using a gelatin head with heavy makeup on it, so it does that weird bubbling, dripping, liquid, weighty thing that suddenly splits open and the goo pours out, like in one of our tests.
Have you done that?
Tests. Yeah, it's in one of the video tests.
But have you done it for something else?
No, we had messed around with it for the blob, and then we went a different direction with the blob, something more controllable.
Yeah, I think you mentioned in a previous podcast episode that this one SFX makeup artist attempted something and then realized it all turned to ash super quickly.
It was all brittle and came apart.
Yeah.
It was Dick Smith.
Yes. Yeah. And you said that he, saved it away for a rainy day to use later. And I guess that's something that you have in your little notebook of, I could do that and something else.
Yeah.
It didn't work for this, but it can work for something else.
Right. And I tried it on the blob 30 some years ago and didn't work then, and I just tried it on this 10 years ago and didn't work then.
But he's going to do it now.
Maybe it's time.
I'm going to write something, and he's going to do it, and it's going to be great.
It won't make any sense. But
yeah. Testing is super important. Even just today, trying to make my face look glowy. Waxy, and it didn't work out. It's,
that stuff
you learn.
The fashion stuff that they've been wearing is like a spray-on skin kind of thing.
What do you mean?
It's like a spray-on mask. Like they did that fashion show where everybody had that really super glossy doll look.
Oh.
Sometime within the past year.
Oh, it's a spray?
Yeah.
Oh, I should have just asked
It's like layering stuff, and you actually peel it off. We just used it. We didn't do it, but the makeup department did it on a movie called Dream Quill, where they had to make bunch of people look robotic.
Yes. Are you allowed to talk about this?
Well, I mean, there's robots in it.
Okay.
And they had a very waxy look. It was amazing because they'd take somebody who looked super weathered, and it just pulled everything back and super tight and all that. And they would get the shot, and it didn't have, they only needed it to last so long. After a certain amount of time, things would start to come apart, and then these people would take this and start to peel it off, and it was like an alligator peeling
my God.
This waxy skin, and then it was all leathery underneath, and it was like, oh my God, this is behind the scenes footage, but this is something to use
Much deeper.
somewhere again as well.
So it's a spray. Interesting. I actually saw somebody on Instagram do a video like that, and it was like a joke of like when it's that time of the month and we shed our skin, and it was a woman doing it, which was funny. But my silly goofy self thought that she had done a thin layer of latex.
Oh, it's actually like a facial mask. I want to say it's for like cleansing your skin maybe or something.
Oh, and then you take it off? Oh, well, maybe I should have used that.
Well, it'd start to look pretty hideous after a short period of time. So.
Well, I could do it for the first,
it's all about timing.
The intro of the podcast, and then take it off.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I'm shedding. As a woman, my peasant woman skin is shedding. My Grace Kelly, that's what Grace Kelly had. That's why her skin was so clean.
It's funny too, because like we didn't want to match her exactly.
Right.
We had to stylize her as well. So, but to have that as a point of reference was really fun.
Yeah, you can see it now that I know that. You can definitely see that. I was thinking of how to describe this music video to anybody who wanted to watch it. And I think I came up with a sentence, but I would be curious what you would describe the music video as for the folks at home.
Two mannequins in a museum that fall in love, that can't connect, but in death they're able to touch each other. I don't know how.
Yes, I like
That's
that.
kind of what it is, mixed with a single solo human
man
performance.
Yes, from the Strokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I guess mine's kind of just pitching other movies as the music video. So I would describe Instant Crush as the daytime parts of Night at the Museum with Sacagawea and Teddy Roosevelt mixed with the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but if the building was on fire. And I think that's pretty accurate.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Sacagawea or Sacagawea?
I don't know.
I think it's Sacagawea.
The nice thing about those people is they could move when they came alive.
Right. But in the daytime, that's why I say it's the daytime parts of Night at the Museum, because they can't move. And he looks at her like, well, actually, I don't think they're close to each other at all.
Okay, so which came first?
Oh, let's Google it real time. Wait a second, because if Night at the Museum came before, then I'm going to be very sad. Be like, okay, Night at the 2006.
Really?
What?
So it'd come and gone.
It had probably
after a long time.
Already had the sequel by then.
Yeah.
With
Interesting.
The Egyptian man's dad, who is the one guy from The Birdcage, Hank
Azaria?
Hank Azaria is Rami Malek's dad in the
serious?
sequel. And there's this really awesome, funny scene that I'm just going to insert right now because it makes me for no apparent reason, because it makes me laugh.
Do not touch this. This is a no touching zone.
Good. Well then.
Oh my God! I can't believe you reached across like that again. I can't even believe it.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Because before we went to film this podcast, my dad was just saying, how much effort went into the music video. And it was a really fun song. I really like the beat and the melody. And it's not that it didn't perform well. I just think it's an underdog of Daft Punk's songs. So
I don't think that was put out with any sort of agenda other than let's make a music video to this that's something that's a little bit poetic and a little romantic, and they did it for themselves. Nice to be able to do that for yourselves.
Yeah.
Obviously. But I don't think they had any agenda. There wasn't any sort of hard sell.
I see.
With it at all. It was just, let's do this. It would be cool.
Hopefully people listen and watch the YouTube video of this so that they can see more of your guys' hard work at the time. Very much encourage you guys to go to YouTube, and I will be putting a lot of behind the scenes photos and videos of everything that my dad described. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, it's just really nice to work on something that's done more for art's sake than commerce.
That's pretty cool. That's something to aspire to. Some inspiration for this week.
If you can tell a story and not use dialogue.
Yes. And with that, we hope everybody has a happy holiday. We will see you next month.
What are we going to talk about?
We're going to figure that out.
You don't know. What would you like us to talk about?
Yeah, comment below. Is there something Christmas themed or New Year's themed adjacent that maybe my dad's worked on. We don't know because I picked something adjacent this time.
Or it could be obscure, or it could be genre. It could be Chucky. It could be Jackass. It could be something about Mary.
Yes, we're just looking at posters on the wall in the room we're in.
If you're talking Spike Jonze, it could be the robots from I'm Here.
Yes, this short film that's awesome.
That's another one that's not very dialogue heavy, that really tells a beautiful relationship story.
Also, oh, right, I have a present for you.
What?
Don't get excited, the people at home. Like, oh my God, she's such an amazing daughter. She got her dad a present. It's something that already existed, but I just have upgraded it for the people just listening. It is a square. It's a square with wrapping paper on it. And you're going to hear the sounds of the wrapping paper unwrapping. And you're gonna, because we're close to the microphone.
If you're feeling it, it feels like a frame.
It does feel like a frame. You know why? Because it's a frame.
And you upgraded it?
Yes. You'll know exactly once you see it. Yay!
So great.
So
it is my Ticketmaster ticket from, what year was this?
2007.
2007, Daft Punk at the LA Sports Arena.
Yes.
Which was great. And we took all you guys and we went back afterwards.
Yes. One of my very first concert was Daft Punk. I was 10 and we had already done Primetime of Your Life. So I had a very weird
you already knew them
childhood of already knowing Daft Punk's faces. And we went.
That's cool. Thanks.
Yeah. They took us, my dad and all of us to. It's crooked in the frame now because I was scared of taping it in the frame. But they took us to their concert in LA and I fell asleep, unfortunately, because I was 10, like midway through. And I really regret that decision of mine, but I didn't understand.
You don't have to tell anybody that, though.
Yeah, well, but it's true. Just being honest. But my dad has kept this ticket forever and it's just kind of been sitting loose in the apartment. Yeah, kind of just floating around. So I got really scared that something was going to spill on it. Oh. So I kind of just made sure it got framed so that it's okay.
Oh, thank you.
You could put it on your desk. I also would encourage everybody, I have a Shopify that I'd like to make stickers for our podcast and have our podcast logo that a friend of mine from film school, Adrian, I will put his Instagram below. He's a very talented artist and animator, and he did our logo. And I would love to have some of our podcast merch up there. I have some merchandise from my documentary on the Child's Play series, on the Child's Play franchise, Living with Chucky on there. And I'm just not as active as I'd like to be. So I'd like to create some stickers for our podcast. There's already stickers from my movie if you'd like to go get any of those. But I also think it'd be really cool, tell me what you think, Dad, I scanned this, and if I digitized it and drew like a sticker version of the ticket, because it's just like, it's a legit ticket of Daft Punk's from 2007, which is cool. Kind of cool. So eventually that will be on our Shopify as well. Please go check it out. Also, as a little promo, this upcoming month, Dear Santa comes out on Paramount Plus November 25th, which will have been before this podcast episode drops. But my dad's team designed Jack Black's makeup. He plays Satan in the movie, and that'll be streaming right now as you listen to this. So go give it a watch and see their work. And that's something. It's about a little boy who writes a letter to Santa, but like me, he's dyslexic and writes Dear Satan, and the letter ends up to Jack Black as Satan. So it's a really great concept.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of twists along the way, and it's pretty great. The Fairleys always write good stuff.
Yeah, and they're really nice people.
And it's cool to see them with Jack again, too, after
Shallow Hal. Oh, yes, which was really cool. Now I'm side tangenting so far from where we were supposed to be. But, yeah, when they were doing the makeup look for Dear Santa, I'm dyslexic, so I almost mixed it up. My dad got to see Jack Black for the first time since Shallow Hal when they did that together. And also I was filming the process of the behind the scenes for the shop, and my sister was in Shallow Hal as Cadence, who's a burn victim that has some scenes with Jack Black, and so they got to see each other again after like 20 something years. So it was very sweet.
And Jack was they were into redoing that pose for that photo.
Oh yes, yeah. So they took a photo on set way back in the day, so I kind of like made them recreate it with my teddy bear.
It's funny.
And it's very cute. So be sure to go see it, and please comment if you have any ideas and suggestions of what we should talk about next month for the December episode. And we will see you then.
Yep.
He said, yep. Thank you for watching and listening.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Bye.